All right, we're live. Wait, I just realized my thing is backwards.
There we go.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Here.
still,
No, it's still backwards.
what's backward?
The lower third?
No, it's not.
There we go. Okay.
It's fine. It's fine for me.
Yeah, fine for me too.
All right. Sorry, some difficulties there. All right. So good morning, everyone. So this is the part orientation walkthrough, and we'll be spending the short morning going through printing the parts. It's not very exciting, but at least it gives you all details on how to print the parts. And it's still freezing here in Pennsylvania. I'm Shy. We got Colin, and then our special guest host for the day is Mark.
Hi guys.
And the easy way again to discern who's who is Colin's got the British accent, I've got the American one. Mark does not have the thick Canadian accent I was expecting, but he's the one without the beanie. The one without the beanie is Mark. It's the easy way to tell, and I'll keep my beanie on for now. All right, so we'll jump right into it. We'll caveat it that a lot of times when you look at the printed part and it might not look like it doesn't need support, you could possibly get away without it, but a lot of the supports are there for things like nut traps and to make sure that the bottom of the part where you have that nut trap gets filled out so that you have a nice clean nut trap or a nice clean counter bore. So we'll walk through these. I'll present. Mark will do most of the talking so you guys don't have to look at the slides, and then we'll interject as we go along with any comments. And then the chat is live, and this will be recorded for later viewing. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and ask in the chat.
You have regular power pack.
And then Mark, go ahead and start with the PSU mount. So this is the PSU mount, and I'll let Mark take it from there.
Yeah. So the document is laid out pretty much the same for every single part. Tried to keep it consistent, and what we did is laid out the amount of shells, top and bottom layers, and infill, which is 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill, and that is for every part on the printer. And then there's 2 other components to it, and whether or not it needs supports, what kind of supports, and the quantity of the part, just to keep things a little simpler. So for the PSU mount, just like I said, 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill. Supports are not required on this part, and the quantity is 2, and the orientation should be just like the picture. And again, that was more for strength purposes for that orientation, so that when you're screwing down against the part, this is the best orientation for that.
Yeah, pretty simple one to start with, that one.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next one now. So this is again the PSU mount. You can see it's like flat on its bottom with the M5 bolts or M5 holes facing upward. Next one is the Z motor, and this is the left and right one, and I'll let Mark take it from there.
Correct. So the Z motor, again, 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill. Supports, we have this at supports touching the build plate, and it's worked out pretty good. The quantity is 2. Now with the supports, I'll admit on mine, cleaning up the supports after on this part, it did need a little bit of work because there's a lot of residual support tracks on the base. So I ended up filing it down a little bit and sanding it down just to make it flat and have a nice 90-degree angle when it went on to the printer. But that one definitely had more supports than most of the parts on the printer.
Yeah, this is probably one of the ones that it's probably the trickiest, isn't it, to try and get your head around. I don't think there is a way of printing this object without putting support in. So the way Mark's done it, which is spot on, the way I printed it as well. Like he said, there may be a bit of afterwork to be done, but to be fair, it should be straight in place print as well. So.
Right, that's the Z motor. Next one will go to the Y motor, left and right one.
So the Y motor, I'll just say it on every single part just so we're clear, but 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill. On this one, we've got supports touching the build plate. There's a quantity, 1 left, 1 right, not just 2 of the same. And the reason the supports are there are because of the counter bores on the bottom for the screws. And there's I believe, remember if this part has an actual track for a nut on here, or if there's counterbar. Let's see.
What was that, Mark?
Yeah, so this one's just for the counterbores on the bottom.
Yeah, so if you're using Cura or Slice or whatever, set your support angle quite high, because otherwise you'll end up generating support inside your steel rod holes, mount points.
Yeah, so that's in here. So in the case of like mine, when I printed it, I think, Colin, you're talking about this little hole inside here. That's where the Y rod goes into, and yeah, I did have supports in there in my case, and I did have to file it down a bit with some heavy sandpaper just to make sure that it was nice and clean.
Yeah, for me, I think I printed at 80 degrees support, so it would only literally put support in the countersunk M5 holes underneath.
And that's a good point. So maybe we'll add a little note on the bottom for that one too.
Cool.
Yep, that's a good point. All right, next one we'll move on to is the left and right idler.
All right, the left and right idlers, 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill, supports touching build plate. This one has counterbore and an actual track for a nut in there too. And there's quantity 1 left, 1 right, and not both the same. And that's it for this one.
Yeah, and you guys can see it's easier to tell too because of the lettering. Just the lettering goes facing normal way. That helps.
I didn't want to have duplicate parts for left and right, so we thought I'd simplify and just show left and right, but there is difference.
That's fine, because on the ones where you need multiples, you just put the number, and the ones where they're slightly different parts, so left and right, you've got left and right, so that should be more understandable for people.
Yep, and then the Z-axis holder is the next one.
Z-axis holder, we have 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill, supports touching build plate, and quantity of 8. So this one, the part orientation on these guys are important because you are clamping down on 2 different pieces. You're clamping it to the frame and the actual rods themselves. So not much else to say about that one though.
They take a lot of weight then from the linear rails, so hence it's quite important you get the orientation right.
Yeah, it's a good point to mention too. So when you're actually screwing in this direction, as the screws go down, it tightens against the layer grain, right? And that helps with that strength. Whereas if you did the other way, you could actually split the layer grain. And remember, there's a quantity 8 of these Z-axis holders. And we'll go to the next one is the Z-axis clamp.
Z-axis clamp has 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill. Supports are touching the build plate for the counterbores, and the quantity of this is 8.
Again, you'd set a high percentage for your infill.
Yep. And again, we're putting on the back this way so that the smooth rod area here in the middle can be nice and clean. All right, next one, the Z-axis lead screw holder.
This one is 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill. Supports touching build plate, and quantity is 2.
Again, you want to set probably your support angle high again, so you're not filling up your holes in the part. If that makes sense.
Yep. All right, next one. The lead screw holder clamp.
4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill, supports touching build plate, and quantity of this is 2.
Just remember, guys, 4 is the magic number. 4, 4, 4, and 40.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, we'll say Mark the breadth here because we have another, I think, 10 or 15 slides to get through. So we don't want to kill Mark by the end here. Yeah. So remember that 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 40. Right. That's our rule. 4, 4, 40. All right. So we'll get through the next one here. The bed lead screw mount. Again, 4, 4, 40.
This one, it could have been oriented a couple different ways. I think this is the better way, considering the way the lead screw is going to be compressed on it, going up and down. Supports are touching build plate, and quantities 2.
Cool.
Yep, and that's a good point too, because if you actually did print it on the back side back here, the same thing. The lead screw, the weight of the lead screw would actually end up ripping out the layers. So I agree, this is a good orientation.
Yeah, because you'd automatically think like the other parts to stand it upright, and that wouldn't give you the most strength.
Yep, and same thing for the next one, the MK. So Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, exact same situation. Support's not required. The only difference being the quantity of this is 4 versus the lead screw mount.
Cool.
All right. Next one is the X end nut, and this is the version 2 because it's slightly shortened than the original one, about 5 mils on the bottom. That allows you to use M325s rather than the M330s, and gives you slightly more clearance.
Yep, 444 rule, and supports touching build plate. Quantity is 2 because there's the 2 different sides to it. So,
all right. Next was the X end screw. I think the same thing goes here.
yeah, this is exactly as the last ones.
Okay, we'll go to the next one. So the below rods, the extruder carriage, this is the heat sink duct. Don't make the mistake that I made. This actually part is symmetrical. So whether you flip it 180 or not, doesn't matter. But I'll let Mark take it from there.
Yeah, so still 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers. I set it at 40% infill. It supports everywhere on this one. It definitely needs the support everywhere. Quantity is 1. And we put a note on the bottom because it has a very thin wall. So I know I struggled a bit in Cura to get it to function. I ended up getting a profile from Shay to print, and it worked out really good. But you do have to consider the infill and the gap infill settings to just make sure that you're not printing one inner, one outer shell with nothing in the middle.
Yep, and in the future, I mean, this will be redesigned to sort of correct for that and hopefully give you a couple more shells on the inside, make the part a little thicker. But for now, weight's also a consideration, so we don't want more plastic than necessary. So that gap infill at least allows for some rigidity within those 2 thin layers, thin walls.
And even though it's pretty thin, it's still I've held mine, and mine has good layer adhesion, so it still feels strong.
Yep. All right, next one is the below rods, the extruder carriage, and that cool
my favorite one to print just because it was so beefy. Our 4 rule, and then supports touching build plate. Quantity of this is 1.
All right, so the fan duct.
Yes, support's not required. I didn't need them for mine. Quantity, this is 2, and this one has the same little caveat at the bottom where the part walls are pretty thin. So we just have to make sure you pay attention to the gap infill settings when you're going through your slicer. Maybe if you have the ability to check different layers as they're going through, just to see what your slicer is doing to it. That's what I ended up.
That's what I'd say, guys. Whenever you're printing these parts or any part, really, it's very easy to have a print preview of the layers and just ignore it and go on. When you're printing a tricky part, it's always good to actually reduce these layers down, look at actually how the plastic is being printed, and make sure that everything's there that should be there. Slicers don't get it right all the time. You might print an object and there'll be walls missing and all sorts, and it's very easy to miss. So just as a rule of thumb, always scroll through your layers and just have a check how your printer is actually going to print the thing.
Yeah, and just a quick note on the little, almost like lips that are here on the end of the duct. These do help channel the air to make sure that the air stays within the nozzle area and doesn't flow anywhere else. So try to make sure that at least you maybe slow down towards the top layers or allow more cooling so that you can get these lips. If they don't come out and you struggle with it, it's not the end of the world. You know, in the future they'll be bigger to account for that, but try if you can to slow it down towards the end. So go next one. Crap. Screen. Hang on, guys. I'll be right back.
Don't worry.
All right, there we go. Go ahead.
All right, the fan duct mounts. Nothing crazy about these ones. I struggled a little bit a couple times actually on this, just because I had to re-put some hairspray down and clean my plate because they didn't stick. But other than that, nothing crazy. No sports required, and quantities too.
Yeah, small parts, guys, always sort of help it along. If you're printing on glass, add a bit of glue stick or hairspray just to stop your ends curling up, really.
Yep.
All right, so the next one.
The 3D clamp, rear clamp, same rules. Support's not required. Quantity is 1.
Cool. I think the most important thing really of this print guide that Mark's done is the pictures themselves. You've only really just got to have a quick look at the pictures he's included, and a lot of it's self-explanatory.
Okay, so the next part is the E3D clamp, the front clamp.
Yep. All the same rules still apply. Supports touching build plate on this one for the counter bores. Quantity is 1. It's definitely pretty thin at the top, but mine still end up working out pretty good.
Yeah, and again, if you don't get this upper lip here, this little tiny corner, because of cooling or whatever, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. It's really this part in here is the crucial part that makes the full contact. So, again, don't stress if you don't get these little tiny lips there. All right, now the pause mount lid.
All right. Same rules apply. Support's not required on this one because there's no counter bore on the bottom. And quantity is 1. This one's pretty straightforward.
Okay. The next one is the actual pause mount base.
Yep. Same settings as the lid. All the same. 4 rules. Support's not required, and quantity of 1.
And the wire mount.
Same rules apply. Supports touching build plate on this one. And quantity, I put as required because you may want to print just for more wires that you've got hanging around. So at least 1, I would say.
Okay. And for the next one, which is the cable 2020 mount. So this was one part that goes on the frame that helps the extruder cable.
Supports aren't required on this one, and quantity of 1.
Right, the outside corner brace.
So this one supports a little different. I had supports everywhere just to help support the tracks for that orientation. Quantity is 4, and just be careful when you're cleaning up the supports on this one. The outside wall is not the thickest, so when I was using a utility knife to clean the supports out, and I ended up slicing through one of the layers all the way down. So just be a little gentler than I was my first time.
Yeah, you can get carried away with print parts, especially where there's thin walls and stuff, or slice your hand open. Just go careful, guys. Yeah. So I think we've just lost Shay for a couple of minutes, so me and Mark will keep going. Mark, have you got it up on your screen in front of you?
Yep, I do. Let me put it in presentation mode.
If you can do that, that'd be great. If not, don't worry, we'll just talk our way through.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. So if you can't get it up, don't worry, Mark. We can just talk through the parts. People identify them by the name anyway.
Yeah, I've just let me see if I can try share here. I don't have the presentation mode, so
Okay, don't worry.
we'll show the comments, but that's okay.
Yeah, guys. So while Mark has a look at that, when you're printing your parts, it's also good to load your bed up to a reasonable extent, especially when you've got a lot of the smaller parts. It just gives the layers a little bit extra time to cool before it goes on to the next part. If you was to print, I don't know, for instance, one of the fan holders or some of them little parts, or the E3D holders, you'll find that you'll get a lot of curling because there's not much time for the part to cool unless you've got super cooling on your printer. So just bear that in mind. It's better to have a build bed of 4 or 5 objects rather than 1 object at a time. It's not the end of the world if you do just have to print 1, but just bear that in mind. It might be worth just slowing it down.
Can you see the screen okay, Colin?
I can see you, but I don't think you're screen sharing.
Okay.
I think it's, where is it? If not, don't stress about it, Mark. We'll just talk through. Oh, there we go. Excellent.
All right.
See. So you've got the Z end stop mount up. Yep.
Yep, there it is.
Perfect.
So this one, we have a little watermark on it just because this part is a work in progress. Shay's done a couple now just to fine tune it. So originally it was released in the printed parts on the Onshape document, but he's been working on it. So once that one's been released, I'll throw it in here. But this was the orientation that I printed for the original one, and it was touching build plate and quantity of 2.
Yeah, I think it's still coming for the simple reason is I think he's made it adjustable, so you can adjust the length as needed.
Yeah. So I've got the Z end stop mount, the lower M4 mount.
Yep, pretty straightforward part again, I'm guessing.
Yep. Yeah, just supports touching build plate and quantity is 2. Nothing crazy on this one.
Cool.
M4 washer. The only difference here, supports are not required, but quantity is 2.
Again, that's a very small part, guys. Like I was talking about before, you wouldn't necessarily just want to print it on its own. Try and print it along with other parts.
Exactly. Idler standoff. Supports are not required on this one. Quantity is 2. Same rules apply with the 4 shells, top, bottom layers, and 40% infill.
Yep.
And again, it's a small part, so.
Yeah. Very important part, that. I think we went through about 5 iterations to get it right.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah.
The control board mount. So we've got same rule. Supports aren't required on this one in this print orientation. And quantity is 2, but I myself have printed 4 because I plan on mounting my Raspberry Pi and some other stuff onto the printer. So you can print as you need.
It's a pretty generic PCB board mount, really, for 20 by 20 extrusion. You could use it for whatever extras you're going to have at the end of the day. Because everyone's going to change their printer to how they want to change it, and they're good little mounts.
Yep. The measuring tool, little different on this one. 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, but 20% infill works fine.
Yeah.
Support are not required. Quantity is 2. And yeah, I've been generally just using 1 of mine, but the 2 is definitely helpful when you get into certain pieces.
Yeah, if you're using the freeway corners, it's probably not so crucial to have 2, but if you're not, then it's handy to have 2 to get the levels right. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's where I have the 3-way corner, so that's probably why I found that using 1 has been okay for me so far. Power and USB inlet mount. So this one, definitely no supports required here. Quantity is 1, and general rules apply.
Yep.
The 3-way corner bracket.
Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one.
Yeah, this one got some attention on the Facebook page. So same general rules, 4 shells, top bottom layers, 40% infill. Supports are not required on this one.
You think they would be. It's crazy, insane shape, but they're not needed.
I remember just waiting to see the first one where I could watch the overhang being printed, and it took me to my 6th one, I think, before I got I was in the basement in time to watch it go, and it's neat to watch, that's for sure.
It is a mind masher. Watch it because you're thinking, hang on a minute, that's not right. Looking at it, but obviously it's doing its thing. And yeah, it's a great part to watch. If you're ever going to watch any part print, that's a good one to watch. Or what do you call it? Motion capture or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, you would think looking at that you'd need support like crazy. Honestly, trust us, it's not necessary. As long as you're not printing at a higher level than 0.2, like a higher thickness layer, 0.2, you'll be fine. I tend to find that thicker layers, you don't get as good at overhang. But yeah, 0.2 or below, you'll be fine.
Yep.
12 of them. They're an interesting print.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got the Bowden bracket. Same general rules, 4 shells, top bottom layers, 40% infill. Supports touching build plate. and quantity is 1. And I should make note that there is a built-in support into the model under the guidler screw, I think. So
yeah, just right in front of you there. There may be another one somewhere else. I'm not 100% sure. It might be underneath the bearing. I can't remember exactly, but they should just snap off. Or when you're removing it from the build plate, if they do snap off, don't panic. They're not supposed to be there. They're just built-in supports.
Yep. The guidler supports are not required. Quantity is 1, and this is the orientation it was printed in.
Yeah, nice, easy one.
Thumbwheel, small part rules apply. Careful. Support's not required, and I've got a quantity of 4 here.
Keep in mind, guys, obviously, if you want to go dual extrusion, you'll have to double up on the wades.
Yep. The herringbone, the large one, supports are not required. You only need a quantity of 1 for a single extruder. And same goes for the small one. Just small part rules apply.
I actually printed that, I believe, the opposite way to that.
Yeah, I couldn't decide which way that I was going to go. This one ended up working fine for me.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue. I think whatever way you print, fine. But I think I'd forgotten to swap it over when I printed, and it did print okay. So don't stress. It's not a biggie on this one.
It's good. The LCD mount for the 12864 LCD. Same general rule. Supports not required. Quantity of 1. This one myself I haven't printed just yet. I'm waiting for my Polymaker polisher to come because I want this one to be in like a polished white plastic. But
nice. It is a very good part. This is a Thingiverse part. This is not something we've designed, and I've gone and print 3 or 4 more others from my other printers with the same LCD. It's a great part. It's solid, and it looks good.
And that's it for the slide deck.
Okay. So yeah, so just to sort of recap, do you want to recap, Mark, roughly? Do you want to go through the shells and the layers and stuff one last time, sort of as a general rule?
Yeah, so the printer general rule: 4 shells, 4 top bottom layers, 40% infill for 98% of the parts, and then the supports, even though it looks like a part might not need them, they're the generally touching build plate to help with the counter bores. And I hope the document works out well for checking out how to print all the parts.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job, Mark. Thanks again for helping us out. It's great when you guys get involved and sort of help us out, because obviously there's not loads of us trying to get this project going. And it is hard, so any help that you guys can give us is great. I know people have been making comments on the bomb as well. That's really helpful. So yeah, keep up the good work.
Yeah, that's where my involvement started on the project, I think. So.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah, well, I'll say thanks as well to Mark for being our special guest host, and particularly for going through and getting all these the slide deck done and helping us figure out the part orientation and make it easy for you guys. So good job, Mark. We greatly appreciate the help here, and I think this will help everybody out as well. I think we'll end it there. This printed guide should be part of the pinned post, and if it's not, it will be soon, as soon as I remember to do it. And then you guys can go ahead and go through this printed guide. It'll also be down in the description for the video, as well as in the invite for the actual event on the Facebook group. So again, hopefully you guys enjoy this and it was helpful with the printed parts. We'll keep adding to this deck as we come up with new parts or change parts or add new parts from Thingiverse, and hopefully this will help you guys out in the printing process. So we'll end it there, and thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks again, Mark, and thanks everyone else. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. See ya.